114th Contact, Thursday, August 24, 1978, 2:33 p.m., pages 206, 214. Quetzal says the concerns just discussed are not intended for the ears of other people, which is why we will only transmit to you all of that which is spoken from now on. So, I will also immediately discuss those concerns with you, which seem important to you and which are also of importance or otherwise of significance for us and our overall task. In reference to your questions about the Saha Center, which you submitted to me during our last contact but which we won't transmit to you as a report for various reasons, the following arouses a clarification. Engelbert and Meier, his wife, have progressed in their efforts toward the meditation so far that they can be trained in the task of introducing the users of the Saha Center into the same. This guarantees a better work balance for your cannibal and for Jacobus, who also become more relieved through this. But the fact that Maria and Engelbert can take over this task stipulates that they become residents of the center and, thus, change their residence at the soonest opportunity, and this is also in connection with the other tasks that are specifically entrusted to Engelbert, as this has arisen in the entire organization through the achieved changes. A change of residence has become urgently necessary and cannot be avoided anymore, as I already told you at an earlier time with the request to find and work out a suitable solution to this, for which I now have to direct the question to you: have you complied with this wish and been able to find a possibility? Billy says, I have, my son. It has given me some trouble because of my constantly bad feeling in me, but nevertheless, it has worked out somehow. Quetzal says, I understand, and about your condition, I will still have to explain a few things to you later. But how do you now see the possibility that Engelbert and his family can transfer their residence to you? Billy says, I think that it should be possible, with some reason from all the group members, that the current so-called group room can be taken over and furnished by Engelbert and Maria for themselves as a living room and bedroom, with which they would thus be accommodated. Next to this room, then, is still another, which is slightly smaller in its size. This could be converted for the two daughters Connie and Gabby, according to which also these two would be accommodated. For Rolf, the son, the solution could be used for the time being that he sleeps with our son Atlantis together in his room, which should certainly cause no problems. However, this requires that we convert two other already chosen rooms as quickly as possible and make one ready for Madeline and another for Engelbert's family. Other solutions can then be found soon enough. And for the guests, we would quite simply have to make it that we obtain some campers, in which these can then spend the night in each case, with which we then also wouldn't come into conflict with the existing laws. Quetzal says you have covered these issues very thoroughly, and the reason of the group members should now be sufficient for them to recognize this advice of yours as good. Billy says, I am, unfortunately, not so sure of that, for too many things are constantly and happily misunderstood, and also a certain jealousy and egoism play a role. Quetzal says that is, unfortunately, of correctness, and concerning this, I would still like to say the following, which depresses me as I already explained to you during our last meeting. Injustices of intrigue-shaped, negative values, which were built on jealousy and egoism, formed in various group members again in recent weeks. This is very serious, and every single group member should finally be mindful of and endeavored around the fact that such degeneracies no longer appear. In the present case, the created intrigues are now running against your new core group member Madeline, who is supposed to be driven out of the center in a rather unjust and very indelicate manner. But now, it should finally be understood in this regard that emotions of such forms are very destructive and can newly drive everything into the risk that a destruction of the group is brought about. It is most urgently necessary that is finally understood and recognized that what has been prepared by us and through the High Council as well recognized ordinal rules must be followed and fulfilled if a smooth coexistence among the group members is to find fulfillment at last. It is also of urgent necessity that the following points are finally noted and find fulfillment. 1. Sincere and true love toward and for one another is the most imperative commandment. 2. Understanding toward and for one another is an equally imperative commandment. 3. Love is neither a privilege nor a right of possession, but rather an acquired understanding and sincere feeling of harmony and recognition of the solidarity and well-being of one's neighbor. 4. Another important point is to be mentioned in reference to the intrigues resulting from jealousy and egoism, accusations and false instructions, which are not instructions of even the least values, must cease under all circumstances, and may not find further application. In accordance with your wish, I endeavored around various analyses and recognized that things are back underway, which already had to be objected to so often that it has already become a tiresome affair. Unfortunately, I had to find out another time that once again, intrigues relating to this were worked out, so that the core group member should be driven out, as I already mentioned. The very unjust reasons for this are anchored in egoism and jealousy and false cognitions. So I have to tell you, unfortunately, that the grounds for these false cognitions and this jealousy and egoism lie another time in your person, because you uniformly testify your love, attention, and sympathy, etc. to everyone in a completely normal and creation lawful form. From this, unfortunately, one and another group member unlawfully presumes that you feel personally more connected to him or her and would love and respect him or her more. If you then turn, however, in the exactly same way to your neighbor, that is, to your other neighbor, then the block of jealousy immediately begins to break open, for it is then assumed that you will be influenced by the other one and that your attention decreases. Erroneous and confused thoughts arise from this, and these degenerate into rather extreme forms and end at the incomprehensible notion that you could fall in love with the other one and that the other one has fallen in love with you. These rather dumb and very unreasonable machinations of an egoistic and jealous form are, interestingly enough, usually only on the part of the female group members, with whom these are in part, unfortunately, still very strongly pronounced, while these regrettable matters in recent months have been on the part of the male group members to a very great extent. Indeed, my analyses have shown that certain female group members feel more for you inside themselves than just a superficial friendship, but they are clear about the fact that it concerns a sincere friendship love, which is of good and steady value, as it should also be according to the laws of creation. But the fact that jealousy and egoism are built up from this is absolutely incomprehensible. Now, the commandment is, indeed, given, as well as the laws, that male and female life forms recognize each other much more quickly in true love than what is the case with the same sex, but it may not be unreasonably inferred that through the testifying of love, unjust and lawfully incorrect things and actions would arise from it. True love in every form, so also sincere love of true, pure friendship, is the fulfillment of the highest and fundamental law of life, which holds sanctity in itself. And there can neither be something wrong nor something dirty in this, which still hasn't been recognized, unfortunately, by many group members. But they aren't able to do this or recognize this because so far, they still haven't become clear in themselves about the truth of their own feelings and emotions, so they aren't able to recognize or decide the true values of their feelings and emotions. Thus, they also aren't able to offer truly true love to even a single human being without falling to jealous and selfish emotions and feelings that are based on vicious anxieties. Through this, it also becomes perceptible that they are still very far away from conceding their true, purely friendly love to another human being and giving it to him, for they are, on the other hand, still too immature to be able to cope with this. And because they, consequently, do all harm to the true love of every kind and aren't able to understand this, they also aren't clear to themselves about their own anxiety controlling them, and therefore, they also cannot recognize and cannot grasp the true love. Through this, they fall into an infatuation, the most dangerous and deadliest and most destructive form of all emotions and feelings, misjudging all love and already destroying this before it can even be built up in its smallest beginnings. Due to this infatuation, this being in love, it then also arises that false feelings are developed and go into action for a fellow human being, which are interspersed with unreal and illogical desires, and which inevitably lead to thoughts, deeds, and actions that are completely degenerate and even dirty and unjust. Through this, it further arises that connections of the highest negative values are entered, which, as a rule for human beings, degenerate into sexual forms and incomprehensible fantasies in this respect, and even destroy much more than what the delusion of being in love is able to do alone. And because all of this is so, it also cannot be understood that the female and male gender are, in principle, diverse in the forms of love, and that also the conditions are fundamentally different in a natural law-related sense. Thus, the following is misunderstood and thought of as unjust, that a female life form can only be connected to a single male life form in natural propagation law if she obeys the laws in accordance with what is truly given for her, whereas a male life form can be connected to many female life forms in this respect, but always only within the scope of the fulfillment of the laws, so without degeneracy. The reason for this is that a female life form, in every respect, can only mate with and become fertilized by one male life form alone, whereas the male life form is able to mate with and fertilize many female life forms, which is truly of necessity for the preservation of the species and for the maintenance or building up of the psyche in a natural law-related manner. It follows from this that a female may never unite several males to herself. However, this is lawfully correct in the reverse case, but always provided that the laws allow this according to the forms that are given by the commandments, according to which these must thus be fulfilled and become fulfilled. But this is not yet understood by the human being, and thus he judges this as unjust. So he is still very unknowing in the recognition and understanding and fulfillment of the laws and commandments of a creational and natural magnitude. Billy says your speech has it all, my son, and I find that it is of great value right now because just at present, these topics are very relevant for us. Quetzal says that is of correctness, for my analyses have made me aware of this fact. For this reason, I also felt obliged to address these concerns. But now, I would like to answer another question for you, since you wanted to know what solidarity between previous groups exists, in reference to our task and various group members. In this regard, I had to stretch the circles a little further and also include people who are presently well known to you and with whom you also stand in connection, but who have no direct contact with the current group. Thus, it arose from my investigations that the following people, in their former personalities, had direct contact with the group, who became great talking points at much earlier times, purely internal group interests and data. These, my friend, are, in short terms, the acquired values, which I didn't have time to determine in more detail. Thus, if you want to get to know more of this, then you must strive yourself, in which case you should very wisely use the Saha Center. Billy says I wanted to anyway for a long time, because I would like to try a leap into the past. Quetzal says you know how very dangerous that can be. Semyaza says if he has planned something, then he doesn't let himself be deterred even by the greatest dangers, which you should know. Nevertheless, perhaps it will then simply be the case that we have to go searching for him somewhere between thousands of years, if he miscalculates or is hurled incorrectly by some circumstances. Billy says well Lord, my child. Semyaza says then at least enlighten us before you're doing, into what time and area you want to leap back. Billy says okay, I promise. Semyaza says then I am calmed. Quetzal says this is also my feeling. But now, yet another question on your part, regarding Madeline, whether she would be a suitable replacement for the Saha Center task. For this, unfortunately, still nothing can be explained so far, because her efforts concerning all matters to be developed in relation to the meditation and concerning the forces coming into appearance, which are to be developed in this regard, still stand very much in their beginnings. it may still take a long time before she develops the necessary qualities and is ready to accept such a task.